A few years after a deadly zombie virus has decimated the human population. A young woman, Anne, lives alone in the woods, possibly being the last woman as she has seen no other survivors in many years. She lives off the land, setting traps for animals, bathing in the lake nearby and listening to a hand-crank radio which broadcasts an emergency message in French, a language she does not understand, and holding on to the last remnants of her past life. She remembers when the virus hit, she was packing with her husband Jason and baby daughter, when gunshots could be heard ringing out through the neighborhood. Anne is not that good at hunting, and ends up having a worm sandwich, which possibly sent her into shock. Another flashback and we see Anne, Jason and their daughter, driving away from their home while the radio plays an emergency message about the raging virus. Anne saw another couple with a child on the road and wanted to stop, but Jason, being smart, decided to drive past. The next day Anne heads over to the now abandoned car which she camouflages with mud and leaves. After relieving herself in a bucket, she locks herself inside for the night, playing with her baby's toy. The next day, she realizes that her cracker inventory is running low. She heads over to one of her traps but she has caught nothing again. When the rain starts to pour, she locks herself inside her car, starting it up just to hear it make a sound. She remembers Jason teaching her about surviving in the wild, and drilling her to perfect her shooting, ending the night around a bonfire. After the rains have stopped, Anne uses a heated knife to cut her arm to collect the drops of blood, then coats herself with poop and mud at the river. She gets dressed and sets out with the bucket of pee and her gun on a food raid. She leaves her bucket on the side of a road and hurries across. She gets to a fence, where she hangs her baby's toy and coats it in her blood. A few seconds later, screeching can be heard. While the zombies are distracted, Anne heads to a house nearby and breaks inside where she finds bodies and a gun. She finds the cupboards filled with canned food and begins to stock up. She gets out, but is chased by zombies and injures herself on a fence. She runs back to her bucket and douses herself in her pee to mask her scent. After washing up and stitching up her wound, she sits and listens to her radio once more. Another flashback and we see Jason returning from a food raid injured. He gets them into the car, telling Anne that half-human creatures attacked him after he cut himself inside of a house. After realizing that she lost some cans during her zombie chase, Anne sets out to recover them but spots something along the road. She steps out to see a girl trying to help her injured father. Anne goes over to help and the girl introduces herself as Olivia. They drag the unconscious man back to Anne's hideout, allowing him to rest. The two girls talk and Olivia tells her that the man, Chris, is her stepfather and she lost her mom when the infection started. Olivia promises to leave once Chris is better. The next day Olivia helps Anne with her daily chores, setting up traps and collecting poop that she uses to cover her scent. That night, Anne plays the French station for Olivia but explains that she cannot understand what they are saying. The two get back to camp where Chris has woken up. He tells Anne that they are planning to head north and thanks her for helping them out. The next morning Anne wakes up to rain pouring outside, so she invites Olivia and Jason to join her in the car. Anne explains that she has been hiding in the forest since the virus began, and her husband taught her all she knows. Jason tells her about Olivia's mother and how she became infected and went crazy. She tried to kill Olivia, and they ended up having to kill her. The three go fishing and Chris tries telling Anne a story about his past but she stops him. Later, she tells him that it seems he forgets the world they are living in and happy stories get to her. She tells him that she saw the horrors of the virus and how the infected feed on humans and just cannot forget that. Chris explains that he has not forgotten but chooses when to remember. After a weird moment in the tent with her stepdad, Olivia sits alone when she is joined by Chris. She asks when they are leaving and thinks he is just staying because of Anne. Anne shares her biscuits with Chris and Olivia and sees Chris stashing away some biscuits. He tells her later that they are planning to leave soon and invites her to come with them but she refuses, saying her place is here. Later, Anne remembers Jason heading out on his final food raid. After disappearing in the dark, she heard zombies screeching and gunshots going off, then silence. The following day, the three are by a river when Chris plays a little game with them, betting that he can hit a tree nearby and Olivia promises to go swimming if she does, seeing that she hates to swim. Chris wins the bet and the three swim in the lake. However, Chris and Anne seem to be getting close, much to the annoyance of Olivia. To make things worse, later, the two laugh and play over a bonfire. Olivia and Chris talk later, and she sees that Anne looks like her mom and wonders if that's why Chris wants her to come with them. But Chris tells her that Anne takes care of them and he wants to do the same. Olivia goes over to talk with Anne and asks to try on her wedding ring, asking her how it happened. Anne tells her that after she found out she was pregnant, Jason got her the ring and they got engaged. Olivia tells her that Chris took her mom to another country and proposed on the beach, trying to one-up her. We then see a flashback to when Anne found Jason's body in the field, on his way back from collecting food. To collect food on her own, she was forced to leave her baby in the car. She headed to a nearby house where she saw an infected woman eating raw meat from her fridge. She shot the woman dead but ended up getting some infected blood on her. She hurried back home to hush her crying baby, and ended up getting infected blood on her. That night, Chris and Anne are returning from gathering firewood while Olivia is actually getting herself ready to give up the cheeks to Chris, taking off her undies. Instead of heading to Olivia, Chris decides to spend the night with Anne's cheeks instead. While they are busy, Olivia steals the radio and heads up onto the hills where she falls asleep. The next morning, Anne asks Jason to stay with her, but he insists that he has to head north, and exits the car to see that Olivia had stolen all the food she had as well. Olivia is returning from the hill when she comes across an infected woman. Anne and Chris hear her screams and run off to find her. Chris finds her just in time to pull the zombie off her. Anne tries to shoot it but realizes that she left her bullets behind, so she uses the gun to bash its head in before Chris finishes it off. Chris then decides to leave in the morning. Another flashback, and Anne is playing with her baby, when she realizes that the zombie rashes have appeared on her stomach. Anne is in tears and apologizes to her crying baby. Chris warns Anne that she will die if she stays there, but Anne is too attached to the memories and her past and is not ready to move on. Chris tells her to accept her past, and forgive herself already, as holding on will get her nowhere. Later, Anne stands over the graves of her husband and child in tears. She returns to Olivia and Chris, telling them that they will need more food for the trip and Olivia wants to help, and coats her in poop mud, and they set out to gather food. Chris arrives at the fence, cuts himself and smears his blood over his body to attract the zombies to him. Meanwhile, Anne and Olivia head back to the house that she raided. As they are gathering food, Olivia knocks Anne unconscious and ties her up in the kitchen. Olivia then screams out to draw the zombies to Anne and runs away. Meanwhile, Jason is being chased by the zombies and runs to wash himself in pee but is not fast enough. Olivia runs out of the house but realizes that a zombie is chasing her as well and runs into the forest without masking her scent. Anne is able to break free and use disinfectants to mask her scent before hiding inside of a freezer. Just as the zombie breaks in, Olivia runs back to Chris, who is asking for Anne, but Olivia cannot answer. Just then a horde of zombies come at them and Chris tells Olivia to hide in the car while he fights them off. Anne turns up with her gun and has one shot left, trying to decide who to save. She remembers grinding up a bottle of aspirin and mixing it with her own blood and feeding it to her infected baby. We then see Anne and Olivia driving away in her car together. Back at the campsite, Chris lay dead after his fight with the infected. Olivia leans over to rest on Anne, who screams out in frustration over the pain she endured. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more movies like this. Thanks for watching.